Thanks, Emma, and thank you to everyone for joining this session. I'm really looking forward to talking about this topic. I hope we have a little bit of fun. And as Emma said, I'm just going to talk actually and tell a little bit of a story for about 15, 20 minutes. And as you're listening, please do capture your thoughts and your questions, because I think will be most important from this session is that we have time for dialogue. And I would also love to learn from you and your experiences as we talk about how to manage self-managing teams. So before I get started, I just wanted to share with everyone that earlier this week, I reached out to my friend, and he's a CEO here in Slovakia for this real estate company, and he's been very curious about agile ways of working. So I was letting him know, on Friday, I'm giving this talk about managing self-managing teams. And he said to me, well, and I thought there was an interest. So I just really want to share this with you, because I was reading some books about self-managing teams, and it's this mixture of false religion, truth, ideal world, and communism. And I just thought, his comments just made me reflect that this concept of self-managed teams, it may not be well understood by a lot of leaders. And as I was reflecting on his comments and thinking of the journey that I've been on, I can confess that actually, in many cases, the practicalities of self-managed teams may not even be well understood by the members of those exact teams. So these are some of the reasons why I wanted to spend some time in this kind of paradoxical talk about managing self-managing teams. So as introduction, my name's Daren Wilson, and I am extremely fortunate to be working for the global healthcare company Roche. Now, why is this so fortunate? Well, for the last 4 years, the pharmaceutical division of our organization has boldly transformed to become a purpose-driven, agile, high-performing organization. And we were obviously, like many of you, inspired by Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux, and guided by our values, we were motivated to discover new ways to deliver more value to healthcare systems and better outcomes for patients. We realized that our existing hierarchical ways of working needed to change if we were truly going to be in the best position to serve society. Now, the talk I'm going to give you here today is actually based on last 4 years of experience through the journey of transformation with Teal. And I have to say that at all times, this journey, it's been exciting, it's been creative, it's been rejuvenating, reflective, and explorative. But I also want to confess that it's also been daunting, it's been frustrating, and it's sometimes incredibly chaotic. But every moment is worth it. And the feedback that I get now from our employees here in Roche, particularly in Roche Slovakia, is a lot of appreciation for where we are now and what we've accomplished. And many of them are saying they never want to go back to working how we used to work and operate. And I think this is a true testament to the value of Teal transformation in organizations and corporates such as mine. So one of the hallmarks of a truly Teal organization is self-managing teams. And at Roche, we've experimented, we've established, and now we're embracing self-managed teams as part of our organizational DNA. Now, we believe that the benefits of a non-hierarchical, purpose-driven, self-managed team is that we're going to be able to allow the brilliance of our people to shine, and to shine through the freedom of expression of new ideas, collective leadership and learning, autonomy, and collaboration and partnership towards achieving valuable outcomes for patients. And when I say it like this, it's almost like corporate jargon. It sounds like utopia, I would imagine. And I just want to say that, yes, this is kind of like the ultimate of what you're seeking, but the path there is has a lot of bumpy roads. I do believe that getting to a self-managing team is absolutely achievable and is worth pursuing, but it takes a lot of effort, a lot of cultivation, a lot of coaching, people patience, unbelievable people patience, and then even a lot more effort. Now, there are a lot of ingredients needed to ensure that you have a well-functioning, purpose-driven, self-managing team where your people can thrive, they're happy, and most importantly, they're achieving breakthrough outcomes that matter. And this all starts with the team culture. Team culture needs to be cultivated with a purpose-driven mindset, team member equality, high psychological safety, a feeling of solidarity within the team, and then most importantly, fairness across team members, especially when they're striving for solutions or compromises. But what we find is that this belief of self-managing teams turning into reality, it does come with challenges. And although we all are here and we all believe that people are intrinsically resourceful, you cannot just simply bring a diverse group of people together, tell them, you guys are a self-managed team, and then let them figure things out. What you're doing at this time is sometimes you're creating a misconception in these teams, often before they're ready for this responsibility, and giving too much freedom, too little structure, and or too little guidance to a newly formed team, it can lead to overload, lack of productivity, and sometimes chaotic frustration within the team. Now, early in our transformation here in Roche, Slovakia, we made the mistake of being too empowering with this approach with mixed results. In fact, to emphasize empowerment, we told our teams that you are now CEOs of your disease areas. And this actually had the unintended effect of some teams becoming allergic to advice or guidance from our leadership teams. They really just took things too seriously. Now, we did have some teams who were able to adapt quickly and self-organized well. And when I reflect on these teams, what they did is that they quickly established clear roles and responsibilities. There was a common respect amongst the team members. But most importantly, I observed a good level of maturity and natural leadership that was existing in many of these teams. At the same time, we had teams that languished with low productivity and little progress. And even though we had agile processes, we had the stand-ups, the 90-day plans, the retrospectives, these teams were just going through the motions. And a few of these teams actually remind me from when I used to coach children's football, or I'm from North America, soccer. If you've ever seen kids playing football, every one of them liked to swarm around the ball. And the direction of the ball was never clear. And no matter which way the ball went, everyone would follow. And as I reflect on these teams, they lack the needed rituals to structure their workflow. They always seem to be changing their objectives. They blurred their responsibilities with a lack of accountability. There was little to no peer-to-peer feedback. And most important and frustrating for myself personally, there was just constant discussions after discussions, but with a lack of clear decision-making. And unfortunately, in some cases, interpersonal issues that impacted psychological safety. But what was the biggest impact in some of these teams was that we still had team members who were still tied to the past and silently resisting transformation. And unfortunately, we did not have their full buy-in or engagement. If the team is moving forward and they're bringing the cart, these are the ones that are holding that cart back and not allowing the progress. In fact, just to kind of give some perspective on this in my situation, it led to some surreal conversations. We were in some cases participating in impact retrospectives on a project with a team. And when asking the team working on the project, well, who was responsible for dealing with this issue or challenge? It was just surprising because no one would claim accountability or responsibility. So it was really evident that we were not where we wanted to be. So as I said before, teal transformation is a journey, a temperamental, twisting, turn around, turn back, trickling to torrent journey. And this is where we get to the management part of the talk for self-managing teams. At Roche, we embrace a leadership model called VACC, and this guides us to be visionary architects, coaches, and catalysts. And I have to say, we definitely need these skills because when you are working with a self-managing team and you really want to set this structure up within your organization, from a VACC perspective, we need to look at the framework of the team, including team culture, leadership, processes, and employee competencies. And we are obligated to provide orientation to the self-management teams. I saw many cases also with colleagues where we say, okay, well, we have self-managing teams, and they walk away and they think the leadership is no longer needed in order to allow those self-managed teams to flourish. But we still need to be there as coaches. We still need to be there as guides. Sometimes we have to be the Sherpa to help these teams learn how to move forward. So we need to act in service of teams and provide the support for team members to find their own solutions. And the other part that is incredibly important is that we need to dedicate effort, and a lot of effort, towards building trust, collaboration, and fostering an environment of psychological safety where every employee can bring their whole self to work. In fact, for me, the main ingredient of success in any self-managing team is the psychological safety. That is absolutely core. And if you don't have that, everything else will definitely fall apart. So based on the early learnings of our transformation, we were compelled to better organize our approach to self-managing teams in our Roche Slovak organization. And we came to this appreciation that our employees are only human. They need time to change. They need space to learn. And they need a helping hand every once in a while. And we recognize, in reflecting on where we were at, that we just needed to rally more behind our purpose, put priority onto psychological safety, coach on team play. I think it's important to also recognize that we had a lot of individualistic behavior in our teams. Some of our teams have never actually learned how to be team players. Some of our people just had to even get familiar with that concept. And we had to provide support for helping teams to set up their team culture, principles, and practices. Now, for myself and my leadership team, which we call our Purpose Enabling Board, we had to humble ourselves. And we had to listen deeply to the concerns, ideas, and feelings of how our employees were experiencing the transformation. And we had transparent, sometimes very emotional, and ruthlessly open discussions on the current situation and what we needed to do better. And what was critical from these moments in the middle of our transformation is that we acted on the feedback, which helped to build the credibility and trust. Now, throughout our entire journey, and I'm sure many of you are here as Agile coaches, our Agile coach actually became a team coach with the core objective of fostering team play. And we guided every team to create their team canvas, identifying their purpose, the superpowers of each team member, identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the team, and then most importantly, for creating alignment, identifying what are their personal values and how do they combine to create the team values. And then from that, the commitment of accountability around both personal and team commitments. Now, you would think that by doing all that, we should have been set up for success and everything would be working wonderful. And we have these well-functioning, self-managed teams that are just doing incredible things in a brilliant way. But we actually quickly realized that this was not enough. And even though we had decision-making methods in place, and we actually had even better practices in managing workflow through outcome-based planning and impact retrospectives, we were still actually not getting the team performance and the outcomes that we were expecting. And we realized that we still had too many teams where internal team leadership was missing. And these teams were like boats on an ocean without a captain. They were moving to the horizon, but the horizon's all around them, and there was like still no clear direction. And we thought that, we could solve this by having the teams nominate a team member into a rotating leadership role. Unfortunately, many of these teams were just too consensus driven and almost in some cases too nice to make this decision within their team. Now, I think you have to appreciate that I'm coming from a different cultural background. I'm Central European, so there are different dynamics here. And maybe the situation would be different in a North American culture, perhaps, but this was sort of the observation that we had in our teams. So how we approached this is that we actually established what we called a team anchor role. And these were roles with additional responsibilities for guiding team direction and supporting decision making. The role assignment was 1 year, it is 1 year. And the way we set this up was that any team member could apply, regardless of what their role is within the team. As you know, we conceptually treat everyone on the team equally. And the benefit we got from this was that we gained this very well-diversified group of individuals as team anchors. And with people in these roles, we started to focus on them specifically on building competencies around leadership, conflict resolution, moderation. Now, it's also important to understand that in our organization here in Slovakia, we are extraordinarily flat, very non-hierarchical. So what was the benefit of doing this is that it actually started to create a new opportunity for this cohort of talent in our organization for career development. And what was also important is that we took the decision to not just be a purpose enabling board, but to synergize these team anchors into the leadership of our organization. So we created a collective leadership team, and every 2 weeks, the anchors and the purpose enabling board, we come together to align on the governance of our company, our priorities, our progress, and our learnings. And to be inclusive on this journey, as we're bringing this cohort of talent through the organization in learning, we also here operate by the premise that everyone is a leader and it starts by leading yourself. So for all of our other employees, we have doubled down onto the learning culture within the organization, putting renowned focus on personal development, with every employee having their own development plan and everyone having a development support buddy within the organization. And this was our way to start bringing better personal accountability into the organization, which we think also has a really positive spin-off effect to the self-managing teams. But the other part that was also really important for us in moving forward along our journey is that we had to be extraordinarily observant of team dynamics and much more proactive to address interpersonal conflict. I know that the concept of self-managing teams is that they will manage conflict within themselves, but sometimes they need help, and sometimes it does require intervention, and we should not be afraid at moments to address this. And so this did have us in some cases reshuffling team members because we observed there was an opportunity for better personality matches. And it also took additional investment into personal coaching for team members, where we observed behaviors that may not be exactly well fitting for the team, or that there was insufficient skills of being a team player. And so we put a lot of focus into this. And this is actually one of the elements I think that has helped us to move forward. Now, what's been the payoff? I mean, this has actually been through 4 years. This is not just in one moment. It's been great moments and it's been very challenging moments. But I can say, and I give you some metrics for those that like numbers, you know, the outcomes for Roche Slovakia and our approach to managing self-managed teams. Well, we just recently did an employee opinion survey and we scored 91% on our team value contribution. And this was 10 points higher than the rest of our global organization. So I think we saw this as a great indicator that what we're doing here is moving us in the right direction. But most importantly, and this is the one that is absolutely critical for myself, we scored strong on psychological safety at 81% for the organization and 85% for our purpose enabling board. And my commitment in being in this organization is to even go farther with psychological safety. I would love to see this in the numbers of 90%. And also we scored 83% for employee engagement. But most importantly, in our organization and my observations of where we're at, we've created better autonomy. We have much better team collaboration. And most importantly, now we're seeing the self-accountability that was absent before and is much more prevalent now in our self-managing teams. And the results that we're now getting from these teams across all areas of our organization is absolutely inspiring. We are pursuing and delivering on innovative projects to modernize healthcare in Slovakia. And these are projects that 3 to 4 years ago were thought impossible in our organization. And the spill-off effect it has is that in the ecosystem around our organization here in Slovakia, from the feedback that we're getting from key stakeholders, from the Slovak Ministry of Health, our physicians and our patient groups, is this appreciation of this new approach that Roche is taking to help to improve the healthcare system in Slovakia. And I personally see that our purpose-driven approach is a key differentiator that is helping us to build partnerships throughout the healthcare ecosystem in Slovakia. But as I conclude, I just want to say that despite our journey and despite the progress that we're making, we are not perfect. We are perfectly imperfect in our journey towards teal. We are continuing to learn, to grow, and experiment in order to make teal ways of working a reality in our organization, but we firmly believe that this is the right direction to go. And as I conclude, the hallmark of this year, as Slovakia and many of you have been through very tough 3 years, particularly with COVID, and as you know, we border Ukraine, so we have impact on the Ukraine war. It's been really difficult in the organization as we've gone through this transformation. And this is actually why one of the reasons that I've put forward this year, we have one goal for our organization and for our people, and that goal is simply happiness. And so we are on the pursuit of happiness now in 2023. And we hope that a lot of the efforts that we've taken here in our organization will help to move our organization and our people in that way. So Emma, that's the big spiel that I wanted to give and the talk of our transformation journey and self-managing teams. And I really look forward now to engaging in conversation with the group.
Daren, I got so engrossed in that I almost forgot that I'm supposed to be moderating. Thank you. It's a big audience here, and scrolling through the audience, I see familiar names of people who I know are on this journey towards being self-managed. And it's so relevant to the work that we do. And that was just, Esther's just dropped the word inspirational into the chat. That was an inspirational chat. And I love the honesty. We do tend to think we sprinkle a bit of magic dust and suddenly teams become self-managing. So it's great to hear from both sides. We've got a lot of questions in the Mentimeter, so I'm going to jump straight over to those. And the one that's at the top, and you touched on it about, the leaders with the VACC and the coaching, and also with the fact that some teams become allergic to leadership once they become self-managed. And the question is, how have you transformed the leadership role, as I imagine the role is different today? What 3 things have changed in the role of the leaders?
Oh, okay. I mean, I can speak, if it's okay, I can speak from myself, because then that's
absolutely
a good analogy. So I think this is one thing that our organization did right, is that first, before even going through transformation, they focused on leadership transformation. And so many of us, we participate in the leadership circle, and we brought this through the organization, identifying our reactive behaviors. And I have to tell you that I was a very reactive leader in the old way of Roche. So what does that mean? Is that I was very much direct, perfectionist, often distant, really geared towards results. And I think that was the biggest change of this realization that, we can actually look at things different. And how do we make sure that how we're showing up, they always say leaders bring the weather. How are we showing up into the creative space? How do we bring creative leadership into the organization? So I think maybe the biggest things is that first, the organization helped to bring self-awareness to the leaders. And I always say, the greatest gift you can give yourself is self-awareness. And I do think that that's been something that Roche has done very well with many people in our organization, building on the self-awareness, getting ourselves into creative leaderships, inspiring us towards being more integral leadership. The other part too was the breaking down our hierarchical mindset, our command and control. That was absolutely critical as well. So putting us through coaching, having us learn how to coach, from the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul, so that we have proper coactive coaching skills as leaders. We're able to see things from a different perspective. I think that also was really critical. It opened us up a lot. And obviously we had these exchanges as leaders, so that got us into the right direction. The other thing is that we took away some of the rules of how we were being measured and judged to free us up to be more creative. So before, we had very specific targets. You had to deliver your numbers, and you have this responsibility. But we started to make things more collective. And what we're doing, how is it helping the country next to me or the countries across the world? So bringing us into more of a network and collective leadership, I think also was a great move that our organization is moving towards. And this has also helped to free us up and take away some of the fear of failure or fear of judgment, because now we're more contributing towards the bigger purpose in that. So if that helps to articulate the kind of three broad areas, I think that's the way I'll answer that question.
That's fabulous, Daren. Thank you. Great to hear about that move from individual to collective leadership, and really stepping over that line as well from the reactive into the creative. I'm not sure whether you're going to be able to answer this question from the big perspective, but a very popular question here is, how did you convince Wash Management to grant the freedom and embed teal locally in what is overall a hierarchical organization? And I think, Bill Anderson was very clear on moving from that hierarchy hill. I think maybe it wasn't just you that had to do it.
Not at all. So we have a lot of smart leaders in this organization. We have some familiar faces I know that have worked closely with Roche. Like I said, Bill Anderson, as our CEO at the time, and many of our senior leaders recognized that we needed to take a different approach, a more human approach to our organization. And what was really interesting was that at the time, we had a great example in our organization from the Netherlands. The organization Netherlands was very avant-garde and already well into agile ways of working. And so it became a little bit of a fishbowl for the rest of the organization to kind of learn about what they're doing, how they're doing these things in such a unique, agile way. And we would all do visits there to kind of see what was going on. And then that actually started creating the inspiration. And I think what was really helpful is that we started to do inspiration tours, learning from other companies that were also very avant-garde towards teal and new ways of working. We spent many trips in San Francisco. We also spent time in Berlin and just learning from others. And in our case, our head of Farm International empowered us as GMs to pursue transformation within our affiliates. So I had a beautiful license to operate, and I loved it. I was empowered. So that allowed for myself personally to bring this organization through transformation the best way I could. And then just to be really fair, not all our organization transformed at the same time in the same way. And I think that was a learning for us as well. So we actually had to initiate another initiative, which was even more so determinant towards transformation, which we called our STEP program. But this was really intended to help bring equality of transformation across our organization. But at the end of the day, I can say that I work for an organization that is very empowering. A lot of what I do is not just within Slovakia. I work very much in a networked way with many other teams across the organization. And this empowerment approach has really helped us kind of move in different ways than we've ever did before.
Thanks, Daren. It's really important as well, isn't it, to remember, as you've just said, teams are at different stages of their transition and their transformation. I'm imagining that your team gets looked to for the example and for the learnings quite regularly.
Well, I think that we have lots of great examples, but maybe what I can say, what's interesting now, and maybe some of you are facing it, is that, the world is continuously changing. And what's really interesting, and I'm observing, is the impact of stress on transformation and our ways of working. Because, and I didn't put this in the talk, but I thought I would bring it here. This stress factor is also, sometimes brings people back to previous state of mind, previous state of being, previous state of ways of working. And we have to be really careful about that. So as an example, we're working now in companies where we have high inflation rate. The uncertainty is there, but it continues to be there. Much more conscientious on cost and expenditures. So these are also pressures that you have to deal with as you're also trying to be empowering, experimental, doing things differently. And this is sort of the challenge I'm seeing right now in helping the organization to prosper and thrive under these really kind of more difficult external environmental factors. And so that's something I want to put out there, because I'm sure many of you are aware. And maybe my comment on that is that this is continuous. This is not like, okay, it's done, we've transformed, let's get on with it. This is an ongoing cultivation of culture, of people, of support, and we have to be mindful of that. So organizations that go through transformation should never get rid of their agile coaches. In fact, we probably even need more agile coaches, and they should never lean away from the support they need to do to develop their leaders to be these coaches and these catalysts. This is something I would lean more into at these times, because it's definitely what's needed for the current situation.
I'm biting back the comment to say, as an agile coach, I'm really pleased to hear you say that. Thank you. We often get asked as well, going through transformations, how do we know when we're there? And actually, you're probably never there, as you say, because it is constant. Absolutely. You talked a lot about psychological safety, and you gave us some great metrics, and you talked about, scoring very highly on psychological safety. And one of the questions that we've got here is, how did you actually do that? How did you evaluate that psychological safety?
Yeah, we just actually had a great workshop this week on psychological safety. So our organization is now bringing this workshop through the organizations, and luckily for where we are in Slovakia, we were one of the very first countries to be able to participate in it. So we were kind of the initial pilot to bring awareness of the topic and to do the surveys to get the scores I gave you. But in all honesty, we started this a long time ago, because it's just absolutely critical to build trust in the organization. That's foundational. And also, we talked a lot about having people come in and removing the mask. It's critical that when people were in an organization, they could be who they were, and we appreciated who they were. Now, this actually took a lot of initiatives, to be honest with you, to get people together, to appreciate the uniqueness of people. We brought in a lot of peer-to-peer coaching. We put in a lot of team play exercises. We kind of created the environment, a safe environment where people can come together, but we had a lot of initiative around this. And I think this was extraordinarily important, more so than the interventions we had, the kind of ways we were talking to our people and how we were dealing with issues. I think also we were pretty open and pretty honest. We weren't just kind of glossing things over, and we were going deep onto the emotional level with a lot of people. I think these are also factors, again, being human, having that human touch in the organization, not just being cold leadership, but really leading with the heart and the mind. To me, it's just these are the things that I think has helped us immensely to create this environment. The last point I will say is that, and I always talk to the organization. So whenever people are in the company complain about Roche, as an example, I'm saying, guys, you are Roche. You are the company, right? So yeah. This organization is in your hands. What do you want to do with it? Who do you want to be? where are we going to go? And so when we have those kind of conversations and getting that realization, this also brings this this company ownership mindset into the organization. And I think this also, if people are familiar with Slovakia, it doesn't always exist in the culture. So this also has been a significant improvement in how we approach things.
I love that. I love that. You are the company. You are the company, and people are reacting to your message about, you know, bringing your whole self to work, being accepting the whole of everybody, taking off that corporate mask, and really, as you say, that head, hand, and heart leadership. Obviously is making huge inroads in your organization. There's a question here that's getting a little more sort of concrete, in that it actually says in the wording concrete. And the question is, what concrete behaviors have changed? For example, thinking of the typical orange HR processes with the team, have any of them changed? And if so, how?
Okay, the typical HR processes. Well, we've moved away from all of our traditional results-driven behavior. So I think that's been one change, but maybe kind of be more concrete on things differently here. You know, what I've observed, what's been really important is that there was a lot of like people looking out for themselves in the past, a lot of this kind of individual approach to being in the company, and sort of this like this need to have this identifier of how great they are and what they're doing. And I think what's changed is that we've now helped to shift this kind of individual importance towards the team element. And this has come from creating this shared purpose within the team and aligning people on the vision and the mission. And I think this has really helped from that prospect. What we still do on this, and this is the approach I take on it, is that I'm very mindful to recognize team and team performance and team behavior, but I also still call out on the individual as well, because you still can't lose sight of that within the team. And this is, I think, has helped to keep people motivated and inspired. So that's another element I think that has been really important. But I would say, yeah, the team play versus individual for me has been one of the biggest and most important changes in this perspective.
This next question kind of jumps into that, and sorry, it's just moved on my screen. So, but there was a question here about the fact that you talked about having individual coaching and gaining coaching skills yourself. And the question was, you know, where are you standing and what are you doing around team and system coaching within the self-organized?
Yeah, so actually that's what that's where we've been focusing on. As I mentioned, my agile coach became a team coach. And our whole focus was around team play. How do we make sure that these are teams that are thriving, that are enjoying each other's company, that are really, you know, able to work through their challenges and their differences. And so, you know, like anything, when we're having our meetings or the team coaching, it's a lot of bringing vulnerability, individual vulnerability into the team, going into that kind of having people talk about, you know, personal elements and connecting and having the team support. For me, this has been really critically important. Mind you that a lot of our teams were formed during COVID, and a lot of our people never actually even knew each other well or met each other. We had a lot of change. So the fact that we can now bring people physically together has been absolutely instrumental, because that human connection face to face, we should never underestimate how powerful that is. So we created a lot more space for that, even though people are saying, okay, we have new ways of working and hybrid. We still ensured that the teams had those opportunities and were able to embrace it. I think that also for me was really critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is what we continue to focus on, to be fair. So.
Okay. And there's a question in here that kind of links in um, around that sort of team and equity and all of those things. Is how do you manage the reward and recognition in this self-managed and all-encompassing setup?
Sure. I think this is still an ongoing topic. One, I don't know if we've completely figured it out. I'll be really honest with you. So first on team equality. So, as an example, a lot of our teams, they end with the word partner in their
Mm-hmm.
and everybody is a partner. So this was a one of the ways that we were looking to harmonize the teams by giving equality in the team, and despite the fact that they have different expertise or experience and such. And this is something that we continue to work on in order to give that kind of grace. Now, the other thing is that again, we're focusing on team play. So, if you're playing football, you're not playing for yourself. You're playing for the team. You're there to help the team score and to win the game, so to speak. And so we kind of bring that kind of concept into the organization. How are we achieving this together? What are we succeeding at? And then what has been your individual contribution towards it? We just take that philosophy, and I think that's been helping us change. And to kind of conclude, at Roche, we've really changed our incentive programs. So for the most part, we focus more on team goals, and the ratings go at the team goal level versus the individual. Again, I don't know if this is the right way or perfect. Again, I would be honest with you, because I know some people are really motivated by personal recognition. That is very important. But I also believe that I think if someone is doing an outstanding job in a team, you still need to call out that person that they're doing an outstanding job. People need to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think we should not lose sight of that. And words sometimes are more powerful than monetary support. Even though we do give monetary support in certain cases, I think people need to know they're doing great, and people need to hear when they need to do better, I would say, as well.
Yeah. So you haven't gone down that route of agreeing that everybody will get the same rating, same bonus, regardless.
Pretty much everybody gets the same bonus here. Yes. So we don't differentiate on that. And pretty much everybody gets the same rating too. It has to be an extraordinary situation that someone would get something different. So less than 5%, I would say. So we really, I think we've made good direction there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know if it's the perfect way. I think still to be seen if it's the right way, but we're moving under the concept that especially because we have a lot of younger people in the organization, we make sure that we pay them very well, because that's important.
Yeah,
that's really critical. But we're really putting the emphasis again around why are you here? What is the difference you want to make in your society, in your family, in your community? How is what you're doing now connected to that? And this is where we put a lot of this emphasis, so that these become the motivators and inspiration for the organization. And so this is actually why in Slovakia, our vision that we created 4 years ago, it's really to help to improve the Slovak healthcare system.
mm-hmm.
We're trying to make a better society here, and this is what we have never moved away from. So it's those kind of things that I think that are helping to drive things forward. I don't have a retention issue. I'm not losing people here. I have a great organization with a lot of great people. So for me, that part has also been one of the successes. My turnover rate is almost close to zero. I can't remember when someone has left us in the last year and a half, 2 years.
That is impressive, especially in the current climate. And I guess when people, that just illustrates, doesn't it, when people feel that their personal motivations are being met and that they are being valued as the whole person, then it really makes a difference to where we sit and where we stay. That's an impressive metric. And there's a question here that goes sort of right back to the beginning of when you were talking, and you said that there were cases where people were too nice to make decisions. And this question is around, what do you feel were the key fears that were holding people back? And so what was the risk? What was the risk of not being nice?
Yeah. Okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to speak to it from a cultural dimension.
Absolutely.
In Slovakia, as a Central European company, a country, sorry, that was, behind the Iron Curtain before 1989. I have a lot of people in the organization that grew up in a culture that the nail that sticks his head up gets hammered, and that's really important to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that there was this hesitance to bring an idea forward without being ridiculed or compromised for it. There was this reluctance, and this is something that we acknowledge and that we work with. We try to create freedom of expression and to give people the opportunity to kind of bring ideas forward without ridicule. Now, the way that we would approach this is it takes it over time. So you have to kind of sometimes create an anonymous format for feedback,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that you do collective feedback anonymously, and there's lots of methodologies, as you know, to do that. And then for those that are more outspoken, they often are involved in facilitating. What are we seeing here? What can we do about it? And you start that progress. But what I've done is started to bring more people into stepping forward with their thoughts, and creating in the right format, getting their voice on the table. So this is an ongoing process. There's we are all still impacted by our childhoods and who we are. It's foundational. So it just takes time to bring this forward in people and create the right environment for it. I think we're making great progress. Can we make even better progress? I certainly hope so. Are some people going to get to where, to their full potential? I hope so, but maybe not, to be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. There's a lot of that still in the organization. So,
Yeah.
but we're doing what we can to kind of create the right environment, and that's the value offering that we have when you're working here.
Absolutely. You've talked very much about the journey and your leadership being team being very on board and the empowerment that you got. There's a question here that says, say that the leadership is on board to establish self-managed teams, but it doesn't provide the sense of direction and guidance that you mentioned that's needed. What would be a good, robust strategy to activate leadership? Sounds like we've got somebody here who's trying to get their team on board.
Well, the leadership team itself is actually the petri dish for self-management, and should be the petri dish for self-management. It should be where you are role modeling your self-managed team's behaviors. So I would personally start there at the leadership. So in our case, it's our people and enabling board. You have to kind of set the example. So that would be my personal starting point. And making sure that the environment that those leaders are in are operating in the way that you would like to see the rest of the organization. Don't treat them any differently from that respect. So that's how I would definitely approach it.
Absolutely. There's a little bit of controversy going on in the sidebar conversation, and
Yes.
and I'm getting direct messages asking me to ask you this question, and I'm not sure about this one because I'm not really sure what you can do about it.
I can't do anything about that. So sorry, guys. I'm not here to be political or controversial, and I really can't comment on pay equity in the organization. What I can talk about is the equity of the people that are under my responsibility and that I'm accountable for, and that's where my focus is. So I appreciate people's kind of observations and concerns, but we're still a far ways away from changing this entire world, right? So it takes time, and we have to have some patience.
Thank you, Daren. let's go to one about the teal journey at Roche. And this question is this teal journey a global one? Where does it come from?
Mhm.
And where's it being sponsored from?
Yeah, it's partially global. So it has been global in our it has been pretty global within our pharmaceutical division, and where we've really jumped in and embraced it, and that's a big chunk of our organization of 90,000 people. We haven't gone as far, let's say, in our diagnostics division. So they have a different business model. We haven't moved that direction completely, but we're starting to make the steps. I think where I observe organization going is that I think we're going to end up with some kind of hybrid version of teal. Our new CEO recently held up a book because he's learning about this. He comes from the Dye organization. He's now in the farm organization. So he's really curious about what we've been doing and how we're doing it. But he held up this book, and I think this book was like how to do agile without chaos. Right?
Okay.
So I think he's trying to figure out like what are the mechanisms and mechanics to make this successful. And but where I kind of land and where I kind of see our organization going is that we are not turning back. We're actually leaning into it even more. I was talking to the head of our transformation and the chief transformation office. This year again, we're going to lean more back into the leadership and really support our leaders so that we have the right foundations to continue the journey in a positive way. And I think the other thing you're going to hear a lot more from Roche is actually us publicly talking about our journey and sharing our stories more. This is also really important for us. We've just had so many incredible experiences, and I think it's time that we start to let other people know, the good and the bad, as you'll hear it from me, of where we're going and what we're trying to achieve.
It's really interesting to hear, actually, because I know there was a lot outside of Roche. There was a lot of speculation about what will happen with Agile and Teal, with Bill Anderson leaving, with Thomas taking over from Severin, etc. So it's really interesting to hear that Thomas is reading books about it. We're coming to the end of the session. We have 4 minutes left. I guess my question is, what's next for your team, and what else would you like to say to us to bring the session to a close?
Okay, good questions. I think, well, again, my team is still learning, so it's kind of like keeping that learning going. We work in a very difficult environment in Slovakia, trying to get our medicines to patients. So, for me, it was heart-wrenching. I had an employee crying yesterday because we couldn't get one of our key medicines, which are for children, through the Ministry of Health. And so, I think where we're at is that, we're sitting here championing towards our purpose. Our purpose remains strong, and we will continue to support our organization, our people, so that we're best positioned to try to make a difference here in the country. That will consist a lot more around the dynamics of self-managing teams and team play. That is something we'll continue to work on. And then maybe my advice for everyone, I mean, you kind of heard it in my talk, because we have to not always be only about theory. We have to get to the practicality and the hands-on working of making transformation work. And it's not an easy journey, but we have to continue. It's a journey that I think we do have to take. So my encouragement for all of you that are kind of going through this is keep trying, keep learning, keep participating in forums like this. I think the life sciences and team are doing an astounding, and Hive Mind and that are doing an astounding job to bring these philosophies of our new ways of working to many different organizations. So I would love to see a lot of you become future speakers for Teal around the world, and what's coming in the future, and to also be willing and bold enough to share your experiences, because I think this is the best way that we'll be able to keep this movement going and have a really positive impact.
That's moving. Thank you. Your last words, what would you like to see
Again, like I said to my company, pursue happiness this year. No matter what, focus on how are you creating happiness within yourself, your family, and the people around you on your teams. Focus on that happiness index. I think this is what's needed this year after everything we've been through for the last few years. And take the right mindset towards it and try to bring it into life. It's beautiful, right? So let's make the most out of everything. I know this sounds like big and fluffy, but I would just say that honestly, it's essential, I think, right now in our human experience. So let's do the best that we can with that.
You're never going to get me complaining about big and fluffy. I think we don't put enough emphasis on what we may think is fluffy. Thank you so much, Daren. That was fascinating. It was inspirational, and very brave.